I need to tell you about something that happened 3 weeks ago. Something that has kept me awake at night. Something that makes me question what we think we know about visitors from beyond our solar system. On the morning of January 15th, an object called 3I Atlas did something we were watching very carefully. It crossed a line, not just any line, the ecliptic plane. That is the flat disk where all our planets orbit the sun. Think of it like a tabletop. All the planets stay close to that tabletop. They do not wander far above it or below it. But 3I Atlas is not from our solar system. It came from somewhere else, somewhere in the vast darkness between stars. And when it crossed that invisible line, something happened. Something brief. Something we did not expect. Let me be clear about what I am saying. I have worked in astronomy for 42 years. I have seen comets. I have seen asteroids. I have tracked objects that swing around our sun and disappear back into space. But this object has shown us things that do not fit the patterns. And what happened on January 15th added one more piece to a puzzle that troubles me deeply. The activity spike lasted 11 minutes. Then it stopped, as suddenly as it began. And in those 11 minutes, we recorded data that raises questions I am not sure we are ready to answer. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. Let me tell you what 3I Atlas is. Or rather, let me tell you what we think it is. The object was first spotted on December 8, 2 months ago. A telescope in Hawaii picked it up. The Atlas Survey System. That is where the name comes from. Asteroid Terrestrial Impact, Last Alert System. They watched the sky looking for rocks that might hit Earth. But this was not a rock heading for Earth. This was something moving very fast. Too fast. When astronomers calculate the speed of an object, they can tell where it came from. Objects that belong to our solar system move at certain speeds. They follow certain paths, they obey certain rules. 3I Atlas was breaking those rules. It was moving at 41 kilometers per second relative to the sun. That is very fast. Too fast to be bound by our sun's gravity. That speed told us one thing immediately. This object came from interstellar space, from between the stars. It was just passing through our solar system. A visitor, not a resident. Now we have seen interstellar objects before. 2 of them. The first was Oumuamua in 2017. That object caused quite a stir. It was shaped like a cigar. Long and thin, it accelerated in ways we could not explain with normal physics. Some scientists suggested it might be artificial. A probe from another civilization. Others said it was just a strange comet. The debate still continues. The second was Borisov in 2019. That one looked more normal. It had a tail like a comet. It behaved like a comet. We felt more comfortable with Borisov. It fit our expectations. 3I Atlas is the third interstellar object we have detected. The 3I in its name means third interstellar, but this one is different from both Oumuamua and Borisov. And what makes it different is what has me concerned. From the moment we spotted it, 3I Atlas showed activity. It had a coma, that is a cloud of gas and dust around it, like a comet has, but the coma was not constant. It would brighten, then it would dim, then it would brighten again. The pattern was irregular, unpredictable. Most comets brighten as they get closer to the sun. The sun's heat makes ice turn to gas. More heat means more gas, means brighter coma. That is normal, that is expected. But 3I Atlas was not following that pattern. It would brighten when it was far from the sun, it would dim when it got closer. The opposite of what we expect. Astronomers at the Gemini Observatory tracked it carefully. They measured the spectrum of light coming from the coma. That tells us what gases are present. They found water vapor. They found carbon monoxide. They found other compounds. Nothing unusual there, but the amounts were strange, the ratios were off. And then there were the brightness spikes, sudden increases in activity that lasted a few hours. Then the activity would drop back to baseline. These spikes happened randomly. We could not predict them. We could not explain them. Some occurred when the object was rotating toward us. Some occurred when it was rotating away. No pattern. I want you to understand something about comets. They are old. They are dirty snowballs left over from when our solar system formed. They contain ice and rock and organic compounds. When they get near the sun, the ice heats up. It turns to gas. The gas carries dust with it. That creates the coma and the tail. This process is well understood. We can model it. We can predict it, but 3I Atlas did not come from our solar system, it came from somewhere else. It formed around a different star, perhaps a star very different from our sun. The ice in that object might have different properties, the rocks might have different composition, the chemistry might work differently. That is what I told myself. That is how I explained the irregular activity. Different origin means different behavior. That made sense. That was logical. But then January 15th happened. The object was approaching the ecliptic plane from below. Picture it like this. Our solar system is a flat disk. 3I Atlas was coming up from underneath that disk. It was rising, and at precisely 14 hours and 37 minutes universal time, it crossed the ecliptic. It passed through that invisible plane where all our planets orbit. I was not watching in real time. I was asleep. I am on the east coast of the United States. It was 9:30 in the morning here, but telescopes around the world were watching. Automated systems were recording data, and those systems captured what happened next. At 14 hours and 38 minutes, 1 minute after crossing the ecliptic, the object's brightness increased. Dramatically, the coma expanded, gas erupted from the surface. In technical terms, the magnitude changed by 2.3 points in 60 seconds. That is a huge change. That is a massive outburst. For the next 11 minutes, 3I Atlas was the brightest it had ever been. The most active, telescopes in Chile captured images, telescopes in Hawaii recorded spectra. Satellites in Earth orbit measured the output. All of them saw the same thing. An object that had been relatively quiet suddenly became very loud. Then at 14 hours and 49 minutes, it stopped. The activity dropped, the brightness fell, the coma contracted. Within 90 seconds, the object returned to its previous state. As if nothing had happened. I received an email alert at 11:15 that morning. I was having coffee. I opened the message and saw the light curve. That is a graph showing brightness over time. And there it was, a spike, a sharp peak, exactly at the moment of ecliptic crossing, then a sharp drop back to baseline. My first thought was instrument error. Telescopes malfunction. Detectors give false readings. Cosmic rays hit the sensor and create bright spots. This happens, it is not uncommon. So I checked the data from other telescopes, different instruments, different locations, different teams. They all showed the same spike. At the same time, same duration, same intensity. This was not instrument error, this was real. My second thought was coincidence. The object was already showing irregular activity spikes. Maybe one just happened to occur when it crossed the ecliptic, random chance. Bad timing for our understanding, but nothing more than that. I calculated the probability. How often had 3I Atlas shown activity spikes? In the 68 days we had been tracking it, we had observed 14 separate outbursts. That is one every 5 days on average. Each outburst lasted between 3 and 19 minutes. Let us say an average of 10 minutes. So in any given day, the object was in an active state for about 2 minutes out of 1440 minutes total. That is 0.14% of the time. The crossing of the ecliptic was an instantaneous event. The chance of an outburst happening at that exact moment was very small. About 0.14%. Small but not impossible, unlikely but not impossible. I could accept that, but then I looked at the light curve more carefully. I studied the shape of the spike, and I noticed something that bothered me. The increase in brightness began exactly 63 seconds after ecliptic crossing. Not 60 seconds, not 65 seconds, 63 seconds. With an uncertainty of less than 2 seconds. Why 63 seconds? What is special about that number? It is the time it takes light to travel 63 light seconds. And 63 light seconds is the distance light travels in 63 seconds. About 19 million kilometers. But that number meant nothing to me in this context. There was nothing 19 million kilometers away from the object. Unless you count the ecliptic plane itself. Here is where I need to explain something about how we measure these events. When we say the object crossed the ecliptic at 14 hours 37 minutes, we mean that is when we saw it cross. The light from that event took time to reach us. 3I Atlas was 3.2 astronomical units from Earth at that time. 1 astronomical unit is the distance from Earth to Sun, so the object was 3.2 times farther than the Sun. Light takes about 8 minutes to travel 1 astronomical unit. So light from 3i Atlas took about 26 minutes to reach us. What we saw at 1437 happened at the object 26 minutes earlier. This is normal. This is how astronomy works. We see the past. But that 63-second delay bothered me. I ran the numbers again. I checked the geometry, the position of the object, the position of Earth, the angle of observation, and I found something interesting. At the moment of ecliptic crossing, measured at the object itself, not as we observed it, there was another alignment. A conjunction, the object, the ecliptic plane, and the direction to the galactic center were aligned, within 0.03 degrees. Now, comma. This might mean nothing. Space is full of alignments. If you look hard enough, you can always find some geometric relationship between objects if you include enough objects. This is a trap astronomers try to avoid, seeing patterns where none exist. But the timing was precise. The activity began exactly when that alignment occurred. Not before, not after. Exactly when. I want to be very clear. I am not claiming this alignment caused the activity. I am not saying there is a connection. I am simply stating what the data shows. There was an alignment, there was activity, they happened at the same time. Correlation is not causation. I know this. Every scientist knows this. You can find correlations everywhere if you look. They mean nothing unless you can explain the mechanism. And I cannot explain any mechanism by which crossing the ecliptic plane would trigger activity on a comet. The ecliptic plane is not a physical thing. It is a mathematical concept, an imaginary surface. There is no field there, no force, nothing that could interact with the object. Crossing it should mean nothing to the comet. And yet the activity spike happened. I was not the only one who noticed. Within hours, other astronomers were posting about it. Discussions began on professional forums. Theories were proposed. Most involved coincidence. Some suggested previously unknown physics. A few mentioned the possibility of artificial activity. A deliberate signal. I need to address that last idea directly. The suggestion that this might be artificial, that the object might be a probe, that it activated when crossing the ecliptic as some kind of message or beacon. This is the same argument that was made about Oumuamua. That object's strange acceleration led some scientists, including respected ones, to suggest it might be technology, an alien spacecraft. A light sail perhaps, something built by an intelligence. The evidence for that was weak. The explanation for Oumuamua's acceleration using natural processes, while not perfect, is much more likely than aliens. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. We did not have extraordinary evidence, we still do not. But 3i Atlas is showing different behavior. The timing of this activity spike is troubling, the precision is troubling, and there is something else, something I have not mentioned yet. During the 11-minute outburst, the spectrum changed. The gases being released were different from previous outbursts. The earlier spikes showed mostly water vapor and carbon monoxide, normal comet stuff, but this spike showed something else. Hydrogen cyanide, in large amounts. Much more than we had seen before. Hydrogen cyanide is not unusual for comets. We have seen it before, but the quantity was strange. And the timing was strange. Why would crossing the ecliptic cause the release of a different chemical? One possibility is layering. Maybe the interior of the object has layers, different ices at different depths. As material evaporates from the surface, it exposes new layers. Perhaps the object happened to expose a hydrogen cyanide-rich layer at that moment. Pure coincidence. Another possibility is rotation. Maybe there is a specific area on the surface that is rich in hydrogen cyanide. When that area rotates into sunlight, it releases more of that gas. Perhaps that area just happened to face the sun at the moment of ecliptic crossing. Another coincidence. But I am troubled by the number of coincidences required, the timing of the spike, the alignment with the galactic center, the change in chemical composition, the 63-second delay that I still cannot explain. Each one individually could be chance, but all together? Let me give you some numbers. The chance of the activity spike happening exactly at ecliptic crossing was 0.14% as I calculated earlier. The chance of the galactic center alignment at that same moment, given the object's trajectory and rotation, was about 0.08%. The chance of both happening together is the product of those probabilities, 0.011%, about 1 in 9,000. Those are not impossible odds. Unlikely things happen. If you track enough comets over enough time, you will see unlikely events. This might be one of them. But it feels wrong to me. My intuition, built over 4 decades of studying these objects, tells me something else is happening. Something we are not seeing. Some piece of the puzzle we are missing. I have gone back through all the data we have on 3I Atlas. Every observation from every telescope. I have built models of its rotation. I have mapped the surface activity. I have analyzed the spectrum in detail, and I keep finding small anomalies. Little things that do not quite fit. The rotation period is not constant. Most asteroids and comets rotate at a steady rate. 3I Atlas speeds up and slows down, only slightly. The period varies by about 6%. That could be explained by outgassing. As gas erupts from one side, it acts like a rocket. It changes the rotation. That is normal for active comets. But the changes in rotation do not correlate with the outbursts. Sometimes the rotation speeds up when there is no visible activity. Sometimes it slows down during a major outburst. The pattern is wrong. The shape of the object is also uncertain. We cannot resolve it directly. It is too far away. But we can infer its shape from how the brightness changes as it rotates. Those measurements suggest it is elongated, maybe 3 times longer than it is wide. Similar to Oumuamua. Actually, but elongated objects should tumble as they rotate. They should wobble. The brightness variations should be complex. Instead, 3I Atlas shows very regular brightness changes, as if it is rotating smoothly around one axis, like a spinning top. That suggests it is not tumbling, and that is unusual for an elongated object. I want to share something with you. A conversation I had last week. I spoke with a colleague who works on planetary formation. She studies how planets and asteroids form around other stars. I asked her about interstellar objects. What could make them behave strangely? She told me that most interstellar objects should be ordinary. They should be rocks and ice chunks ejected from other solar systems during planet formation, billions of years old, frozen, inactive, except when heated by a star. They should behave like our comets and asteroids, just with different initial compositions. But she also said something interesting. She said that in a galaxy with 400 billion stars, there is room for outliers, for objects that formed in unusual circumstances, around unusual stars, in unusual environments. Statistics allow for rare events, for things that happen only once in a billion systems. And with billions of systems, those rare things exist somewhere. Maybe 3I Atlas is one of those rare things, an object from a system very different from ours, with ice that behaves in ways we have not seen before, with chemistry that produces unexpected reactions, with properties that surprise us because we have never encountered them. That would explain everything, a natural explanation for all the anomalies, just a strange object from a strange place, nothing more. But it does not explain the timing. It does not explain why the biggest outburst happened exactly when it crossed the ecliptic. That specific moment, that specific alignment, that feels like more than chemistry. That feels like response. I am aware of how this sounds. I know the path this reasoning leads down. First you notice anomalies. Then you look for patterns. Then you start seeing intention where none exists. This is how conspiracy theories begin. This is how scientific thinking breaks down. So let me be very clear about what I am saying and what I am not saying. I am saying the data shows an activity spike at ecliptic crossing. That is a fact. I am saying the timing creates questions. That is also a fact. I am not saying this proves anything about the object's origin or nature. I am not claiming this is evidence of intelligence. I am not jumping to conclusions. I am simply troubled by what I see. And I think that trouble is worth sharing. Because science advances when we pay attention to things that trouble us. When we investigate anomalies, when we ask questions, even when those questions sound strange. Over the past 3 weeks since the ecliptic crossing event, we have continued tracking 3I Atlas. The object is moving away from the sun now, getting dimmer, harder to observe. In another month, it will be too faint for most telescopes. In 3 months, it will be beyond our ability to track. It will disappear back into interstellar space. Another visitor gone. The activity has continued. Irregular spikes, unpredictable brightness changes, but nothing as dramatic as the January 15th event. Nothing that makes the same kind of precise correlation with geometry or alignment. It is as if that was a one-time thing. A singular event. We are analyzing all the data now, multiple teams working independently, papers are being written, models are being built. Eventually we will reach some kind of consensus. We will decide what 3I Atlas most likely is. A strange comet, an unusual asteroid with ice. Something else. But I suspect the ecliptic crossing event will remain unexplained. We will probably conclude it was coincidence, the most likely explanation, the most reasonable interpretation. And maybe that is correct. Maybe unlikely things just happen sometimes. But I will tell you what keeps me awake. It is not the possibility that this object is artificial. That is too extraordinary, too unlikely. What keeps me awake is the possibility that we are missing something fundamental, some aspect of how objects behave in space that we do not understand, some physics we have not discovered, some chemistry that operates under conditions we have never studied. If we dismiss this event as coincidence, we might miss an opportunity, a chance to learn something new, to expand our understanding. Science is full of stories about anomalies that were ignored, data that did not fit the models, observations that were explained away, and sometimes those anomalies turned out to be important. Sometimes they pointed to new physics, new understanding. I do not know what 3I Atlas is telling us, but I think it is telling us something, and I think we should listen. I encourage you to follow this story. More data is being released every week. More observations are being made. If you are interested in astronomy, if you are curious about what else might be out there, this object deserves your attention. Share this with others who might care. Help spread the word that something unusual is happening, that we have questions worth asking. Because in the end, that is what science is. Asking questions, following the data, wherever it leads. Even when it leads to uncomfortable places. Even when the answers might challenge what we think we know. 3I Atlas crossed a line on January 15th, an invisible line that should mean nothing. And something responded, something activated. For 11 minutes we saw activity unlike anything before. Then it stopped to melody. That is the mystery, that is what troubles me, and that is why I am telling you about it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about these questions, and please, stay curious. Keep watching the sky, because the universe is stranger than we imagine. And sometimes it shows us that strangeness in ways we cannot ignore.